smiling. That's good. This morning's scripture reading is found in Luke chapter 9, verse 28 through 36. Hear these words. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up into a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy. When they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter said to him, "Master, is it good for us to be here? Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." You see, he did not know what he was saying. While he was speaking, a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my Son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept this to themselves and told no one at that time what they had seen. This is the word of God for the people of God. It's nice and bright outside today. We don't have any sunshine. It's kind of cloudy. But, today's message talks about in the middle of the night. And even though it's not night out, you can kind of put yourself in this perspective as we hear these words. You know, life has a way of sometimes slipping up behind and slapping us in the head. I know it certainly did me. And that wasn't just Robin slapping me around. And my mother used to do that. She'd use a yardstick or a fly swatter, whatever it took to shut us kids up, especially on long trips. Sometimes it's a gentle slap. Other times it's not. A man was driving down the road. He passed a traffic camera and saw it flash. Astounded that he had been caught speeding, but when he thought he was doing the speed limit, the man turned around and, going even slower, passed the camera again. It flashed once more. He couldn't believe it. He turned, going a snail's pace this time, and passed the camera one more time. Again, he saw the camera flash. Well, by that point, he had guessed that there must be a problem with the camera, and he went on home. 4 weeks later, he received 3 traffic tickets in the mail, all for not wearing a seatbelt. Life can be cruel, can't it? You think you're doing something right, and it slaps you upside the head. In his book titled, Not That You Asked, TV's Andy Rooney lists 100 of his oldest and most fervently believed opinions. For instance, he says, "I don't like any music that I can't hum." Some of us can relate to that. I know I can because I can't play a tune. Or how about this one? When I was young, I always assumed that I'd get to like carrots when I got older. But I never did. Or this one, if dogs could talk, it would take a lot of fun out of owning one. On a more serious note, Rooney writes this: "I do not accept the inevitability of my own death. I secretly think there may be some other way out." Good luck with that, Andy. But here's the one I want you to think about. The middle of the night, says Andy, seems longer than it used to. Can anyone relate to that? If you have ever laid awake mulling over a deep hurt or a nagging worry, You know what he's talking about. The middle of the night can be mighty long and lonely, can't it? The story of Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration occurred at a time when the disciples were in the middle of a long night in their lives. The story is told by Matthew, Mark, and Luke with an almost equal amount of detail. Jesus leads their minds down from the celestial heights to the lowest depths of degradation, dishonor, and death, however, when he says, "The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, chief priests, and scribes, and be killed, and the third day be raised up." And in just a moment, he shattered the disciples' bright dream, just like that. Like some fearful nightmare, the foreshadowing of the cross fell upon their hearts, filling them with fear and gloom, striking down hope, courage, and even faith itself. It would almost seem as if the disciples were unnerved, paralyzed by the blow. The next 6 days were filled with silence, without word or deed, as far as the records show. How shall their lost hope be recalled, or courage be revived? How shall they be taught that death does not end all, and that one shall find life by losing it? You see, the Transfiguration is the answer. Their experience on the Mount of Transfiguration would wake them in the middle of a long night. Have you ever experienced one of those long nights when your hopes were dashed, your mind and your heart were filled with dread? I know I certainly have. During the terrible storms created by El Nino in 1998, a devastating tornado hit a southern community. In a TV news interview, a third grader who had huddled with her classmates in the elementary school hallway as a funnel cloud roared overhead was asked if she was afraid. Isn't that just like reporters? They ask some of the dumbest questions, don't they? She asked if she was afraid. And she replied matter-of-factly, "No, I just cried and prayed to Jesus." Have you ever been there crying and praying to Jesus? It's amazing the things human beings can endure. Radio broadcaster Mort Krim tells of visiting a new Asian restaurant in his neighborhood. The place was already filled with customers. He remarked to the waitress that this new place seemed to be a success already. To which she replied, she knew the restaurant would succeed because the owner had to climb over a mountain to get there. Well, she wasn't exaggerating. As she explained the owner had to climb over a mountain to get there, she talked about the restaurant owner and his family who were forced to escape from Cambodia and immigrate to the U.S. because of persecution under the communist government. They literally climbed over a rugged mountain to flee their country. And now in their new land, the family worked into the wee hours every night, and they never complained. Waitress reported. They were just so happy to be in America. She knew right then their determined attitude and hard work would spell success for the restaurant. Now, we admire people like that, don't we? The longer the night, the brighter success shines in the light of day. But when you're in the middle of that dark night, climbing a mountain to escape an oppressive government, or sitting at the bedside of a loved one in their last hours, or lying in a hospital bed with a tube sticking out of you, or going over your checkbook in the wee hours of the morning, wondering how you will ever make ends meet, or watching helplessly as your teenager follows up their life, or whatever your long night might be. It's hard. It's hard at such times to hold on to the promises of God, isn't it? The disciples were in that dark night. They had left everything they had and placed all of their hopes in Jesus. Now Jesus tells them that he must be crucified. It is then, when their hearts are numb with hurt and disbelief, that Luke writes, about 8 days after Jesus said this, he took Peter, John, and James with him and went up into a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became a bright flash of lightning. Then Luke writes, Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. In the middle of their long night, when their hearts were laden with anxiety and despair, the disciples became fully awake to the truth of the gospel. Christ is the Lord of creation. The fact that Jesus must be taken from them did not negate the promise that they had brought into their lives. You see, there is a dawn that follows every darkness, hope that follows every despair, a beginning that follows every ending. The experience on the Mount of Transfiguration came at precisely that moment when the disciples were prepared to believe that the worst about the future. When they were ready to throw up their hands in despair and resignation. In the middle of their long night, the message of hope was delivered. An unknown woman tells of losing her mother, whom she called her dearest friend, to cancer. You see, her mother was always supportive. Her mother always clapped loudest at this woman's school plays, held a box of tissues while listening to her first heartbreak, and comforted her at her father's death. She encouraged her in college and prayed for her entire life. When her mother's illness was diagnosed, the woman's sister had a new baby and her brother had recently married his childhood sweetheart. So it fell on her, the 27-year-old middle child, without entanglements, to take care of her mother. She didn't complain, however. In fact, she counted it as an honor. And now, she sat at her mother's funeral. The hurt was so intense, she found it hard to breathe. What now, Lord? She asked as she sat alone in the hard pew, grieving. Her brother and sister had their families, and now she had no one. Her place had been with their mother, preparing her meals, helping her walk, taking her to the doctor, seeing to her medication, reading the Bible together. And now her mother was gone. She was alone. About that time, she heard a door open and slam shut behind her in the church. Quick footsteps hurried along the carpeted floor. An exasperated young man looked around briefly, then he sat next to her. He folded his hands and placed them on his lap. His eyes were brimming with tears. He began to sniffle. He said, "I'm late." Though no explanation was necessary. After several eulogies, he leaned over and asked, "Why do they keep calling Mary by the name of Margaret?" "Oh," this young woman replied, "because that was her name, Margaret. Never Mary. No one called her Mary," she whispered. She wondered why this person couldn't have sat next to another person on the other side of the church. He interrupted her, grieving with tears and fidgeting. Who was this stranger anyway? "No, that isn't correct," he insisted, as several people glanced over at them, whispering, "Her name is Mary, Mary Peters." "That isn't who this is," she replied. "Isn't this the Lutheran church?" he asked sheepishly. "No," she said. "The Lutheran church is across the street." "I believe you're at the wrong funeral, sir." The solemnness of the occasion mixed with the realization of the man's mistake bubbled up inside the young woman. It came out as laughter. She cupped her hands over her face, hoping it would be interpreted as sobs. The creaking pew gave it away, however. Sharp looks from the other mourners only made the situation seem more hilarious. She peeked at the bewildered, misguided man seated beside her, and he was laughing too. As he glanced around, deciding it was too late for an uneventful exit, she imagined her mother laughing at the final amen. They darted out the door and into the parking lot. I do believe we'll be the talk of the town, he smiled. He said his name was Rick, and since he had missed his aunt's funeral, asked her out for a cup of coffee. That afternoon began a lifelong journey. A year after their meeting, this couple was married at a country church where he was the assistant pastor. This time they both arrived at the same church right on time. This woman writes this: "In my time of sorrow, God gave me laughter. In place of loneliness, God gave me love. This past June, we celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary." You see, in the middle of our long night, God gives us hope. That is what the Transfiguration is all about. The dispirited disciples needed at that moment in their lives to see the glory of Christ revealed. And when His glory was revealed, they were able to get their lives back on track again. And that's what many of us need to do and need to know in the middle of our lives. God is still God. Christ is still Lord. Beyond the darkness, whatever the darkness may be, there is a dawn. Dr. Hope Kohler had a situation on her hands. One of her patients, 5-year-old Billy, was suffering from aggressive lymphoma. Billy's parents wanted their son to die at home in New Mexico, not in the Boston hospital where he had been treated. They couldn't afford a flight, so Hope set about finding transportation for them. She and her family got as far as Dallas, but Billy became too sick to continue on. Commercial Airlines wouldn't carry someone in his condition. Hope got Billy admitted to a local hospital. She stayed with him around the clock, trying to keep him comfortable. Finally, Hope located a doctor who owned his own plane. He got the boy home just in time. Billy passed away soon after landing in New Mexico. In addition to his name and dates on the tombstone, Billy's grateful parents inscribed one more line: "Hope brought him home." You know, that line could be added to tombstones all over this world. Hope brought him home. The experience of the Mount of Transfiguration restored the disciples' hope. In the middle of our long times, may it restore our hope as well. May God add His blessing to this word.